tonight on First at 9 this Monday, the 5th of January 2026. Fraud probe. Former Minister Johnston Fernando, his two sons and a former Southern manager remanded until January 9th over alleged misuse of state property. Gazetted. Parliamentary pensions repeal bill gazetted, aiming to abolish MPs' pension entitlements. Tourism boom. Tourism revenue reaches $3.2 billion in 2025. 3 million tourists targeted in 2026, says Minister. Construction of the second terminal at BIA to begin in April with the support of JICA. Budget priorities. President Anura Dissanayake urges officials to utilize Budget 2026 allocations efficiently within fiscal limits for national priorities.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Derana News Channel. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story this evening. Former Minister Johnston Fernando, along with his two sons and the former transport manager of Lanka Satosa, were remanded until January 9th in connection with the alleged misuse of a vehicle belonging to the Satosa Corporation during Fernando's ministerial tenure. The former minister and his youngest son were arrested today by the Financial Crimes Investigation Division after recording statements pertaining to the matter.
On the 30th December, the Police Financial Crimes Investigation Division nabbed Johnston Fernando, the son of former Minister of Cooperatives and Internal Trade Johnston Fernando, over allegations of causing a financial loss of 250,000 rupees to the state by deploying a Satosa lorry for operations at an ethanol company purportedly owned by the former minister. Along with Fernando, Indika Ratnamalala, the former transport manager of Satosa, was arrested yesterday for allegedly preparing forged documents related to the incident. Subsequently, the duo were ordered to be remanded until January 9th after being produced before the Vattala Magistrates Court. Against this backdrop, former Minister Johnston Fernando was summoned before the Financial Crimes Investigation Division today to provide a statement. Police had cautioned that failure to comply would result in steps being taken to obtain an arrest warrant. Accordingly, the former minister arrived at the Financial Crimes Investigation Division at around 8:40 this morning, accompanied by another of his sons, Jerem Fernando. Subsequent to recording of statements, the former minister and his son were taken into custody. The arrestees were produced before the Vattala Magistrates Court this evening. Presenting evidence before the court, FCID officers stated that the arrests were made in connection with an ongoing investigation into the alleged illegal production of ethanol by Astadik Overseas Lanka, as well as the manufacture of alcohol under the guise of an air freshener detergent. Investigators revealed that inquiries had uncovered the procurement of 20,000 litres of ethanol from a company affiliated with the Palvatta sugar factory on June 7th and 8th in 2012, which was transported using a lorry owned by Satosa. The court was informed that the suspect Jerem Fernando had served as a director of the ethanol production company in question. Additionally, investigating officers stated that the then Minister of Cooperatives and Internal Trade, Johnston Fernando, had issued a written request to the chairman of Satosa seeking employment for the lorry driver for a period of 1 month. Police further informed the court that investigations would continue in line with instructions received from the Attorney General. The counsel for the suspects argued that the evidence submitted was insufficient to sustain charges under the Public Property Act and requested that their clients be released on bail. However, the court ordered that the two suspects be remanded until the 9th of January.
ඔබේ සම හඳුනාගෙන ඖෂධීය ශාකසාරමය forever face wash එකක් භාවිතා කරන්න.
The Parliamentary Pensions Repeal Bill has been gazetted to repeal the Parliamentary Pensions Act No. 1 of 1977. The bill seeks to abolish the pension entitlements of members of Parliament and their spouses.
In the National People's Power Manifesto, A Thriving Nation, A Beautiful Life, a commitment was made to abolish special privileges granted to former presidents and their families. The NPP further pledged to eliminate the pension entitlement of members of parliament. Accordingly, on 16th June last year, the cabinet approved a proposal to instruct the legal draftsman to prepare 2 separate draft bills to facilitate the enactment of the relevant legislation. Subsequently, the Attorney General approved the duly prepared drafts. In this context, the draft bill aimed at abolishing parliamentary pensions has been officially gazetted pursuant to the directives of the Minister of Justice and National Integration. The proposed legislation, titled the Parliamentary Pensions Repeal Act, seeks to repeal in full the Parliamentary Pensions Act No. 1 of 1977. The bill stipulates that any individual currently entitled to receive a parliamentary pension shall cease to be eligible for such benefits with effect from the date of its enactment, and no pension shall be payable thereafter.
President Anura Dissanayake says Sri Lanka's capital expenditure is yet to reach satisfactory levels despite high capital allocations by the government. During a meeting at the Presidential Secretariat with secretaries of ministries this morning, the President instructed officials to utilise the 2026 budgetary allocations to their fullest with the intention of best serving the country and the people.
The allocations for ministries were determined based on our priority requirements. There are other needs as well. However, due to limited funds, we were unable to prioritize them. Funds were not allocated because there were no remaining requirements, but because the selected needs were identified as priorities. Experience has shown that regardless of the volume of funds allocated, the state sector has often failed to achieve the intended outcomes after disbursement. When capital expenditure over recent years is reviewed, the utilization percentage remains unsatisfactory. Previously, when budgets were prepared before finalizing agreements with the IMF, there was an expectation that capital expenditure levels would be maintained. The failure to provide required funds later became an issue, and I hope such a situation will not reoccur. The Treasury is also concerned that the ministries are not requesting funds. In fact, some allocated funds were returned to the Treasury on December 31st. Therefore, there is no issue related to delays in fund allocation. Another concern is that certain state institutions are obstructing the implementation of projects. We are also aware of the widespread inefficiency within the state sector. Compared to recent years, capital expenditure has increased, but it is yet to reach satisfactory levels. Funds allocated for capital expenditure must be utilized. The government remains the largest investor in Sri Lanka, as no private institution or company invests at this scale. 1.4 trillion have been allocated for capital expenditure. Additionally, expenditure provisions have been expanded by 500 billion rupees in view of the destruction caused by Cyclone Ditwa, with over 250 billion rupees being allocated for capital expenditure. It is your responsibility to utilize these funds effectively, achieve the expected development outcomes, and deliver services to the public.
With the new curriculum reforms for grades 1 and 6 scheduled to be implemented later this month, controversy continues over the new grade 6 English module. Several education sector stakeholders claim that the reforms are being implemented without adequate mobilization of necessary physical and human resources.
The first school term of 2026 commenced today in government schools, government-approved private schools and Piriven. The new education reforms introduced by the government will be implemented this year for grades 1 and 6. Introductory sessions for grade 1 students began today, with formal instruction scheduled to commence on the 29th. Similarly, formal academic activities for grade 6 students is set to begin on the 21st. Minister of Education Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya yesterday convened a media conference to address the controversy over the reference to an inappropriate website in the grade 6 English language module introduced as a part of the new education reforms. Education sector stakeholders today responded to the Prime Minister's comments.
At yesterday's media conference, neither the Minister of Foreign Affairs nor the Prime Minister disclosed who was responsible for formulating these education reforms. When journalists raised critical questions, the media conference was abruptly concluded. There was no one left to respond to those questions. During yesterday's media conference, the Prime Minister stated that digital transformation in education sector would take place in March through the establishment of a task force. However, these initiatives are scheduled for the middle of the year, while education reforms for students of grade 1 and 6 are being implemented at the beginning of this year. It was clear from the media conference that these transformations are being carried out without adequate mobilization of physical or human resources. I heard the Prime Minister say that the links provided in the modules leads to government websites. However, the links included in the modules we reviewed do not belong to government institutions. institutions. The Prime Minister misled us. The National Institute of Education has been misleading us. Errors in the grade 6 modules were identified even by students, demonstrating the weakness of these materials. If you visit the NIE website, you can see that these modules are being removed on a daily basis. This is the first page of the Director General's message from the National Institute of Education. Even this message has not been proofread. It contains numerous spelling errors. If those responsible are unable to properly read even a single page of a textbook provided to children, then who is truly behind this conspiracy?
Meanwhile, the Inter-University Students' Federation today distributed handbills and sought public signatures opposing the new education reforms in front of the Fort Railway Station.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa says children's rights have been violated due to the unsystematic nature of the new education reforms. Speaking at a public gathering in Mirigama, he asserted that those responsible must be identified and held accountable without delay. The education reforms have devolved into a vulgar pursuit due to the unsystematic approach adopted in their implementation. These changes were carried out without a proper procedure, consultation, discussion or debate. Therefore, the officials, politicians and policymakers involved must be held accountable. The Prime Minister, who also serves as the Minister of Education, bears responsibility for this situation. As a result of these actions, the rights of the children of our country have been violated. No one can evade accountability. We need to be informed of where the mistakes occurred, who was responsible and what actions will be taken against them. Leader of Sarvajana Balaya, Parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira today sought blessings at the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic in Kandy. He subsequently called on the chief prelates of the Malwatu and Askiri chapters.
Leader of Sarvajana Balaya, Parliamentarian Dilith Jayavira sought blessings at the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic today. Chairman of Sarvajana Balaya, Roshan Ranasinghe, Deputy Chairperson Anuradhaya Hampath and National Organiser Dilum Amunugama were also present. The Sarvajana Balaya leader subsequently visited the Askiri Mahaviharaya, calling on Chief Prelate of the Askiri chapter, Venerable Warakagoda ඥානරතන Mahathera.
කෙරේදා ගම්පොළ ගිහිල්ලා පන්සල් ටිකක් ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණය කරන්න. ගැටලේ තිබුණා. සජීවී වැඩසටහනක් කරත් බෝලෝ කරලා ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණය සඳහා ශාලාහානියක් ආවම. තාමත් හරියට ගණනය කරගෙනත් නැහැ. විවිධ මත ප්‍රකාශ කරාට ශාල වශයෙන් අපේ ආර්ථිකයට බලපාන. අමුදර ඔය ව්‍යවසායකයෝ පොඩි ව්‍යවසායකයෝ දැන් ගම්පොළ හැම ඔක්කොම ඉවරයි. ආයේ මිනිස්සු නිකඩින්නේ සමාජ ආර්ථික රක්ෂණයක් නැහැ. මේක නිකඩින්න බෑ මිනිස්සු.
MP Jayavira also visited the Malwatu Mahaviharaya, where he called on Chief Prelate of the Malwatu chapter, Venerable Tibbatuwave Sri Sumangala Mahathera.
නව ප්‍රවණතාවයන්ට මුහුණ දෙන්න බෑ අපි. ඒක අපි ඉතින් උපාය මාර්ගිකව ඕන ප්‍රවේශමින් කරගෙන යනවා අපේ හැමෝම. ඒක හොඳ කණ්ඩායමක් ඉන්නවා. දිලු මෙහෙම විශාල කාර්යභාරයක් කරා හඳුන්නේ මේ පහුගිය දවස්වල මේ සුලිකුණාටුවෙන් පස්සේ ගම්වල උඩුදුම්බරයි තමයි වැඩිම හානිය අපේ මේ පන්සල් කීපකුත් තියෙනවා.
The parliamentarian also called on Deputy Chief Prelate of the Askiri chapter, Venerable Narampanave Anandathera. He also called on Deputy Chief Prelate of the Askiri chapter, Venerable Bendirwe Upalithera.
ගැටලු ඇති වෙනවා නම් ඇති කරනවා නම් ආල කම්පැනියක් එහෙම ජීවිත රටක් නෙවෙයි මේක. මේ රට පාලනය කරන්න ජනපතිවරු අගමැතිවරු මැති ඇමතිවරු බිහි වෙන්න බිරික් කරන්න පුළුවන්. පාලකයා පාලනය එක නායකත්වයේ කියන එක තව එකක්. නායකත්වය තමයි මේ රටට අඩු.
Subsequently, MP Jayavira met Deputy Chief Prelate of the Malwatu chapter, Venerable Niyangoda Vijitasiritera.
පෙළපොතේ ප්‍රශ්නේදී ඒකට දක්වන ප්‍රතිචාරයේම
ඒවා විශාල විනාශයක් වුණා නම් තවත් ඉන්නවා.
ඒකනේ හැමදේම විතර විශාල විනාශයක් නියාමන වැඩසටහනක් නෑ නේ උතර.
Parliamentarian Chamaras Sampath Dasanayake claims that while the Janata Vimukti Perabuna has an understanding of politics, it lacks a clear grasp of state governance. He made this remark at a press conference today after assuming duties as the national organizer of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party.
The newly appointed national organizer of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Chamara Sampath Dasanayake, formally assumed duties today at the party headquarters on Dali Road, Colombo. The occasion was attended by SLFP chairman Nimal Siripal De Silva, along with several members who had previously left the party and aligned themselves with other political movements. Our party was facing 18 lawsuits, but now only the case filed by the Asiri Jayasekara is pending. It was to him that the position of national organizer was first offered. He agreed to take on the position at midnight, but at 2 p.m. the following day, he withdrew, stating that his family was not in favor of him taking on the responsibility. Even so, our party remains open to him. There is no barrier to join our party. It is open to anyone. Governments cannot be defeated through lawsuits, by breaking parties or by acting alone. A country cannot be run alone. One cannot engage in politics alone either. Looking at the past, how did the JVP engage in politics? They acted very cunningly and arrested people. While the JVP understand politics, they do not understand governance. We do not need to oppose them. Those supporters who were with us and later left to join them are now on the streets protesting. 90% of teachers voted for the current government, yet today those same teachers and trade unions are opposing it. Meanwhile, several other public representatives also commented on the current political situation of the country. How can a government that cannot even properly print grade 6 textbooks build the country? A government that fails to print grade 6 textbooks talks about introducing new constitutions and rebuilding the nation. They should first ensure that school textbooks are printed properly. Yesterday, the country expected the preliminary investigation report to be released, revealing the real suspects and clearing the allegations against the Prime Minister in the eyes of the public. There is doubt as to whether the report is being withheld because the Prime Minister is accountable for this mistake. For a transparent investigation to take place, the Prime Minister should resign from her position.
The Manusat Derana campaign to provide school supplies for children affected by Cyclone Ditwa continues to gain momentum. As part of ongoing relief efforts, donors continue to hand over school supplies to the Derana head office, extending much-needed support to students impacted by the disaster. Meanwhile, donated school supplies continue to be distributed to children in need. As part of the program, school supplies were donated to students of Mahindodaya Dhamma School at the Asokarama Temple in Handala. Additionally, arrangements were made this morning to provide books and essential school supplies to students of Sirivardhana Mahavidyalaya Yatiyantota, further strengthening educational support for children affected by Cyclone Ditwa. Welcome back to First at 9. Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Employment and Tourism Vijitha Herath announces that Sri Lanka achieved the nation's highest ever annual income from tourism and overseas remittances in 2025. Speaking at a press conference, the minister revealed that the nation earned a record $11 billion from these sectors.
Due to decisions we took last year, 2025 became a record-breaking year for tourism with the highest number of tourist arrivals ever recorded. 2.362 million tourists visited the country, marking a 15% year-on-year increase compared to 2024. Tourism revenue 2025 reached $3.2 billion. Last year also saw the highest level of foreign remittances in the country's history, amounting to $7.19 billion by November. On average, monthly remittances stood at $650 to $700 million. With estimated remittances for December, total inflows for 2025 are expected to reach $7.8 billion, surpassing the previous high of $7.14 billion recorded in 2016. From tourism and remittances alone, our ministry generated $11 billion in revenue. Following Cyclone Ditwa, we requested foreign assistance and received support from the Sri Lankan diaspora in several countries. Sri Lankans in Maldives contributed 72.5 million rupees, Japan 59.6 million rupees, and Chennai, India 44 million rupees. The total direct and indirect funds received amounted to 85 billion rupees. Meanwhile, 57.6 billion rupees were earned last year through consular services.
කන්සුල සේවා මගින් මිලියන 576.9ක් ආදායම උපයලා තියෙනවා.
තොරව නිමා කරන්න පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයක් ඇති කළා. ඉතින් මම හිතන්නේ ඒක
In most countries, tourist arrivals typically decline by around 12% following a natural disaster. However, Sri Lanka did not experience such a drop. Furthermore, we attracted significant foreign investment, securing 126 investment projects valued at $329 million. Of these, 119 projects are in the final stage of approval and are expected to commence shortly.
පටන් ගැනීමේ අධීරය තියෙනවා.
What are your plans for 2026? What are the targets that you all have discussed?
We think we can reach 3 million tourist arrivals within this year. That is our minimum target, and we want to increase our income. We cannot say exact number because the calculation of that method has already changed by the has been changed by the central bank.
Also, the visa-free program, there was a plan to increase it to 40 countries. Is there a timeline for that? Can you please give us a few details?
It will be begun first quarter of this year.
And it is for all 40 countries, is it, sir?
Yes.
How do you think you can cope at the airport? Because as it is, over the weekend there is massive traffic on the expressway. So how are you going to manage with these constraints, especially at the airport, and not just the airport but also the other infrastructure?
With the support of private sector, we have taken some steps for that. And Tamil 2 will start next April with the support of JICA. Then we think we can expand the airport furthermore. It will take most probably 2 years.
The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation announced a revision of fuel prices effective from midnight today. The price of a litre of super diesel will be increased by 5 rupees to 323, while auto diesel prices will be increased by 2 rupees to 279. The price of 95-octane petrol will be revised to 340 rupees following an increase of 5 rupees. Kerosene prices will also be increased to 182 rupees. However, the prices of 92-octane petrol will remain unchanged. The Colombo Bourse began the week in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as Commercial Bank, Carson Cumberbatch and ACL Cables. The benchmark ASPI gained 0.66% to close at 23,014.75, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 increased by 0.67% to end the day at 6,227.44. Market turnover was 5.77 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 216 million rupees. Musharraf Ibrahim from Capital Alliance joins us now with a few thoughts to round off our Markets in View segment for the year.
The Sri Lankan stock market showed positive momentum during the first week of the new year, which consisted of 4 trading days. The all-share price index ended the week at 22,864 points, reflecting a weekly gain of about 3.6%. Similarly, the S&P SL20 index finished at 6,186.09 points, representing an increase of about 2.39% for the week. Driven by increased activity, total weekly equity turnover reached 16.96 billion rupees, a robust 37.34% increase compared to the previous week.
That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.